"They're getting creative," I commented to Pip'squeek one day, after my boots had been programmed to activate their magnetic locks at random intervals. But the sabotage attempts continued. My navigation systems would mysteriously malfunction during spacewalks. Training drones would become unexpectedly aggressive. Even my food synthesizer started producing meals with exactly the wrong chemical composition for human consumption. "Just a hunch. Don't worry about it." Pip'squeek's eyes widened. "How did you?" "Let me guess," I sighed. "Crystalline traces." Later, in Engineering Bay 4, Pip'squeek examined my suit. This wasn't an accident, they declared, their fur bristling with indignation. Someone sabotaged the oxygen recyclers, rather elegantly I might add, if I hadn't seen the quantum signature. I grabbed a passing debris piece and hurled myself toward the emergency station. Most cadets haven't done. Free diving I managed between increasingly labored breaths. Interesting, Xylith'vax's voice came through the emergency channel. Most cadets request immediate extraction when their suits fail. The nearest station was 30 meters away, through a field of rotating obstacles. As my vision started to blur, I caught a glimpse of Kr'thax's crystalline form at the observation window, their body pulsing with what looked suspiciously like satisfaction. "Suit malfunction detected," the system announced, far too calmly for my taste. "Please proceed to the nearest emergency station." I was halfway through a zero-G combat simulation when the environmental suit I'd been issued suddenly lost pressure. Most species would have had about 2 minutes of consciousness. Thanks to human respiratory efficiency, I had a bit longer. The next day's training session introduced what Xylith'vax called enhanced environmental challenges. I called it trying to kill the human in creative ways. "Better get moving," Pip'squeek whispered, "but find me in Engineering Bay 4 later. I could use someone with your unique capabilities." Cadet Rodriguez Xylith'vax's voice boomed. "This isn't a social gathering." I laughed. "That's definitely an exaggeration. Though I did accidentally crush a drink dispenser yesterday when the gravity shifted unexpectedly." "Oh, the Deathworlder everyone's talking about." "I'm Technical Specialist Pip'squeek." They adjusted their goggles, which took up most of their face. "Is it true you can bend durasteel with your bare hands?" "No harm done," I said, helping gather the scattered tools. "I'm Zephyr." I looked down to find what appeared to be a sentient ball of purple fluff with enormous goggled eyes. The creature barely reached my knee. "Oh stars, oh void, oh quantum fluctuations," squeaked a voice from somewhere near my ankles. "I'm so sorry. I was recalibrating the gravitational field emitter's end." As I rounded the corner, something small and fuzzy collided with my legs. Tools scattered across the floor as a tiny figure tumbled. "Fascinating," Xylith'vax's voice crackled through my comm. "Make it 20 laps." "You know," I wheezed, passing a wide-eyed maintenance worker. "Where I'm from, this would be considered workplace harassment." Again, he barked as I completed my 15th lap through the station's maintenance tunnels. The environmental controls had been programmed to randomly shift between desert heat and Arctic cold, while the gravity fluctuated between 3 times Earth normal and near zero. Little did he know, humans' greatest talent isn't our strength or endurance, it's our stubborn refusal to accept limits in the first place. 2 weeks into training, and I was starting to think Commander Xylith'vax had a personal vendetta against Earth's entire solar system. His antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. "Indeed. Report for advanced training tomorrow at 0400. Let's see if we can find your actual limits, Deathworlder." "With all respect, Commander," I replied, wiping sweat from my brow. "Back on Earth, we have a saying, go big or go home, and I'm about 50 light years too far to go home." As Kr'thax stomped away to the medical bay, Commander Xylith'vax approached me. "A word of advice, cadet. Impressive performance aside, making enemies on your first day isn't wise." I shrugged, which seemed to infuriate them further. "Looking forward to it. By the way, you've got a little crack there." I pointed to their left shoulder, where a small stress fracture had appeared during their run. Kr'thax stormed over, their crystal body resonating with barely contained fury. "This isn't over, human. Physical prowess isn't everything in the Academy. Wait until the tactical simulations." The Aldebaran cadet actually did faint this time. "Thank you, Commander," I replied, trying not to sound too smug. Though I should mention I'm actually not very athletic by human standards. You should see our professional athletes." Well, he finally managed. It seems the Deathworlder has exceeded expectations. The chamber fell silent. Kr'thax's crystalline body had darkened several shades. Commander Xylith'vax's mandibles were working overtime, clicking in what I assumed was either extreme annoyance or reluctant impression. 3 minutes and 58 seconds later, I completed the course. I moved through the stations methodically, letting my persistence predator heritage shine. Humans might not be the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but by all that's holy, we could keep going when others quit. All systems normal, Commander the Assistant confirmed. By the void, Xylith'vax's professional demeanor cracked slightly. That's not check the gravity calibration. I gripped the first weight. In Earth gravity, it would have been like lifting a small car. Here, with proper leverage and the station's gravity assist, it was more like a particularly stubborn sheep. I hoisted it overhead. The human will never match Kr'thax's strength. The final challenge was the endurance test, a series of weighted lifts in varying gravity conditions. Kr'thax's crystal muscles had made it look easy. As I approached, I heard whispers. I grinned through the sweat. We call this spring back home. Their core temperature is maintaining stability, someone shouted. How are they not in thermal shock? The next section was meant to test environmental adaptation. The temperature dropped to near freezing, then soared to levels that would boil water. Thanks to humanity's remarkable temperature regulation and my childhood in the mountains, it was uncomfortable but manageable. They're using the gravity fluctuations to compensate for their biological limitations, one of the instructor's assistants noted, their tentacles waving in excitement. I launched myself at the climbing wall, designed to test different appendage configurations. The handholds were spaced for beings with much longer limbs, but that's the thing about humans, we adapt. I used momentum and lower gravity sections to bounce between holds, probably looking like a caffeinated space squirrel having a seizure, but making progress. Impossible, I heard Kr'thax mutter. Their bone density shouldn't allow. The course started with a gravity variable sprint. Child's play compared to running in Earth's mountains. I took off, feeling the pull increase from 0.8 to 2G. Around me, cadets murmured as I maintained speed. Cadet Xylith'vax called, mandibles twitching in anticipation of failure. You're up. I cracked my knuckles, a habit that made several nearby cadets flinch. Wouldn't dream of it, walking chandelier. Kr'thax's crystalline structure pulsed with smug satisfaction. They turned to me, faceted eyes gleaming. Try not to embarrass your species too badly, soft flesh. Impressive, Xylith'vax nodded. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. A new record. A towering figure stepped forward from our group. Kr'thax, pride of the Centauri Empire, all 4 meters of crystalline beauty and ancestral combat programming. Their silicon-based bodies sparkled as they effortlessly completed the obstacle course, each movement precise and calculated. Begin standard physical evaluation, Commander Xylith'vax's voice echoed through the chamber. Cadet Kr'thax, you're first. And hey, if I had to shock some xenobiologists with my barbaric capabilities along the way, well, that was just a bonus. The Academy's assessment chamber looked like someone had given a drunk engineer unlimited funding and told them to build the galaxy's most sadistic playground. Floating platforms, gravity wells, and obstacle courses filled the massive space, all bathed in the sickly purple glow of artificial atmosphere generators. As I marched out of the hall, I could feel the stares of my fellow cadets boring into my back. 3 years of this ahead. 3 years to prove that humans weren't just the galaxy's newest curiosity, we were here to stay. Report to Dormitory Block C, Cadet Zephyr ordered. Training begins at 0500 station time. Do try not to break anything with your barbaric strength before then. I bit back another response. If he only knew about base jumping. Denied, he turned to address the assembled cadets. Let this be a lesson to you all. The Federation accepts all species, even those whose ancestors thought throwing themselves off cliffs with artificial wings was a reasonable method of scientific inquiry. Permission to speak freely, Commander. I've reviewed your species file, Xylith'vax continued, pacing in front of me. His ceremonial armor clinked with each step. A Class XII Deathworld origin. Persistence predators, endothermic, omnivorous. He spat the last word like it was a particularly distasteful cosmic radiation. The Board of Admirals may have approved human admission to the Academy, but I remain unconvinced. I suppressed a grin. Variable gravity? Please. Try growing up where a morning jog felt like carrying a megalodonian cruiser on your shoulders. Xylith'vax's antennae twitched the equivalent of a raised eyebrow if said eyebrow could detect pheromones in atmospheric pressure changes. Humor. How predictably human. Let's see if you're still laughing after your first training session in variable gravity conditions. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. A tall, willowy Aldebaran nearly fainted, their bioluminescent spots flashing in distress. With all due respect, Commander, I replied, keeping my voice steady, we've evolved beyond sticks. We now write poetry about hitting things with thermonuclear devices. Tell me, Cadet Zylith'vax leaned forward, his face inches from mine. What makes you think a species that still writes poetry about hitting things with sticks is qualified for the Federation's elite military program? Yes, Commander, I barked, maintaining my position. The station's 0.8 standard gravity felt like a vacation compared to home, but I wasn't about to show it. Rule number 1 of being a human in space: never let them know your advantages. The sarcasm in his translator was thick enough to choke a Jovian gas whale. Behind him, a group of alien cadets from various species watched with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. A blob-like gelatinous from Proxima B rippled in what I assumed was amusement. So Xylith'vax's compound eyes narrowed, refracting light in a dazzling display that might have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. They sent me another Deathworlder. How delightful. I, Cadet Zephyr Hurricane Rodriguez, stood ramrod straight, fighting the urge to scratch my nose in the station's artificially maintained atmosphere. Growing up in the high-gravity regions of Earth's Andes mountain colonies hadn't prepared me for the peculiar mix of alien environmental preferences. Commander Xylith'vax's mandibles clicked in what I'd learned to recognize as extreme annoyance. The towering mantis-like alien's iridescent carapace gleamed under the artificial lights of the Galactic Federation Military Academy's orientation hall. His forearms were crossed in pairs across his thorax, never a good sign. He turned back to the audience. Let this serve as a reminder to us all. The galaxy is vast and full of surprises. Sometimes those surprises come packaged in radiation-resistant, gravity-defying, persistently optimistic forms we never expected. Indeed, Xylith'vax's antennae twitched. You will be the first human to serve as a crisis response specialist, working with mixed-species crews to handle situations that require your unique perspective. A ripple of translator-delayed laughter swept the room. Even Kr'thax's crystal structure resonated with amusement. With respect, Commander, I replied, fighting back a grin. We just call that Tuesday back home. Your actions have earned you more than just academic recognition, Xylith'vax announced. The Federation fleet has requested you for a special assignment upon graduation. It seems they're particularly interested in your, what did you call it? Talent for surviving impossible situations while breaking all known laws of physics. I approached the podium, maintaining proper military posture, despite my muscles still complaining from last week's adventure. Cadet Rodriguez stepped forward. A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. I caught sight of a delegation of human observers trying very hard not to look smug. In light of these events, the Academy is proud to announce the establishment of the Deathworlder integration program. We will be accepting qualified candidates from all Class XII worlds, with a focus on combining their unique capabilities with our advanced training. Several xenobiologists in the audience began taking furious notes. He gestured to a holographic display showing the gravity control override sequence I'd implemented. This solution required not just physical endurance, but creative problem-solving, deep technical understanding, and most importantly, what humans call thinking outside the box. But perhaps most significantly, Xylith'vax's compound eyes swept the audience. This incident has forced us to reevaluate our understanding of Deathworlder species. We had assumed that their physical capabilities were their only notable trait. We were wrong. Pip'squeek puffed up so much they nearly doubled in size. Furthermore, the commander's mandibles clicked with what I now recognized as pride. The innovative emergency protocols developed by Cadet Rodriguez and Technical Specialist Pip'squeek have been incorporated into our standard safety procedures. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. The formal uniform itched, and the medals they'd pinned on me felt unnecessarily heavy. All I'd done was what any human would do: refuse to accept impossible odds. The events of last week's gravitational crisis have been thoroughly reviewed by the Academy Board. Xylith'vax continued. The data shows that Cadet Rodriguez not only survived forces that would have liquidized most species, but did so while executing a successful rescue operation. In the front row, Kr'thax's crystalline form sparkled. The fractures from the gravity incident had healed, leaving intricate patterns that they now wore as proudly as battle scars. Next to them, Pip'squeek was practically vibrating with excitement, their purple fur standing on end. Commander Xylith'vax stood at the podium, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the artificial lights. 3 standard cycles ago. He began, his translator conveying the gravity in his voice. We accepted the first human cadet into our advanced training program. Many, myself included, questioned this decision. Report to my office, he continued. We need to discuss your apparent inability to follow simple evacuation orders, your reckless disregard for protocol, and... A pause, followed by what sounded suspiciously like a sigh. Your commendation for exceptional service under extreme conditions. The Academy's Grand Hall had never seen such a diverse gathering. Representatives from every member species of the Federation filled the amphitheater, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic life. Even the Hive Mind Collective had sent a delegation, their synchronized drone bodies hovering near the ceiling. I winced. Here it came, probably expulsion for interfering with station systems without authorization. Commander Xylith'vax's voice came over the general comm. All cadets report to Medical Bay 3 for immediate evaluation. Except you, Rodriguez. Kr'thax had suffered some surface fractures but was largely intact. They stared at me with their faceted eyes, their crystalline structure vibrating with what might have been confusion, or possibly constipation. I still wasn't great at reading silicon-based body language. I slumped against the control panel, every part of my body feeling like I'd gone 10 rounds with a cargo mech. Through the bay window, I could see the Aldebaran cadets slowly descending, their spots now pulsing with relief rather than fear. The station shuddered one final time. Then, blissfully, the gravity began to normalize. Override code Pip'squeek Alpha 7, I shouted, thanking whatever cosmic force had motivated my small friend to share their emergency codes. Warning, the AI chimed. Unauthorized protocol detected. Rerouting power to secondary containment, I muttered, fingers flying over the controls. Initiating emergency stabilization sequence. I reached Engineering Bay 7 with what felt like every muscle fiber screaming in protest. The gravity control panel was a maze of alien technology, but Pip'squeek had walked me through similar systems during our late-night repair sessions. Approaching critical failure in sectors 5 through 9, the station's AI announced calmly. Structural integrity at 47% and falling. Another crystalline crack from Kr'thax's direction spurred me on. Their outer layers were beginning to splinter. I pushed through, using the varying gravity fields like a deranged parkour course. Where the gravity was low, I built up momentum. Where it was high, I used that momentum to power through. Their biosigns should be dropping, I heard someone say. No organic being can withstand. I took a running start and launched myself into the first gravity pocket. The force hit like a compression wave, trying to flatten my human frame into a pancake. But human bones are remarkably sturdy things, especially when supported by muscles conditioned by a life in high gravity. Sorry, Commander, I interrupted. But as you keep reminding us, I'm just a primitive Deathworlder who doesn't know any better. Cadet Rodriguez Xylith'vax's voice cut through my planning. Do not attempt. As Pip'squeek rattled off directions, I did some quick mental calculations. Earth gravity was 1G. My home in the Andes colonies ran about 1.4G. The pockets I'd need to cross were registering anywhere from 3G to 8G. I grinned despite the situation. Good thing I'm not most species. Rote, now. Zephyr, no. The gravitational forces would crush most species. What's the fastest route? The manual override for the gravity systems is in Engineering Bay 7, they responded. But with the fields this unstable, no one could possibly. Pip'squeek, I called into my comm. I need options. A quick glance showed the other cadets had either escaped or were pinned down themselves. The Aldebarans were still struggling in their high-gravity pocket, their natural levitation abilities useless against the intense force. Help their usual arrogance was gone, replaced by raw fear. I can't. My structure is. I was almost to the exit when I heard the distinctive sound of crystalline structures under stress. Kr'thax was trapped between two opposing gravity fields, their silicon-based body starting to fracture. All cadets, clear the chamber, Xylith'vax ordered, his exoskeleton creaking as he fought against the fluctuating forces. Through the observation window, I could see other sections of the station experiencing similar chaos. In one corridor, supplies and equipment orbited like a miniature solar system around a gravity well. In another, the increased gravity had begun to warp the structural supports. The safety protocols aren't responding. Pip'squeek's voice was frantic. The quantum field generators are cascading. The next shockwave hit like a meteor strike. The station's gravity grid went haywire, creating pockets of intense gravitational forces scattered throughout the chamber. I watched in horror as 3 Aldebaran cadets were pulled toward a high-gravity zone, their bioluminescent spots flashing in panic. Engineering reports multiple system failures. Xylith'vax barked, all 4 arms working different control panels. This is not a drill. All cadets evacuate too. Another tremor, stronger this time. The artificial gravity lurched, sending several cadets floating toward the ceiling. Kr'thax's crystalline form clinked against a support beam. That wasn't part of the exercise. Pip'squeek's voice crackled through my personal comm. Something's wrong with the primary gravitational stabilizers. A violent shudder ran through the station, cutting him off. The lights flickered ominously. Looking forward to it. Commander, I said, catching Pip'squeek's thumbs up from the engineering bay window. Should be educational for everyone involved. Today's exercise, Commander Xylith'vax announced to the assembled cadets, will test your response to cascading system failures. His mandibles clicked in what I'd learned to recognize as anticipation. The simulation will include. I couldn't help but smile as Kr'thax and their conspirators realized what that meant. They'd have to face the same conditions they'd been subjecting me to, without protection. The commander's compound eyes studied me for a long moment. Very well. However, given these circumstances, perhaps we should adjust tomorrow's training. Full environmental extremes, no suits allowed. Let's see how everyone performs on an even playing field. They are, I agreed. But I'm willing to forget about it. After all, what's a little attempted murder between classmates? Commander Xylith'vax stepped forward, his antennae rigid. These are serious accusations, Cadet Rodriguez. Kr'thax's surface went cloudy with what I assumed was the crystalline equivalent of going pale. Oh yes, I continued, pulling out a small device Pip'squeek had helped me construct. We found quantum traces of crystalline manipulation in all the malfunctioning equipment. Fascinating data, really, especially since unauthorized tampering with Academy equipment is a Class I violation. The chamber fell silent. Even Xylith'vax's mandibles stopped clicking. Could what I interrupted, trying to keep my tone light despite my exhaustion? Survive? Adapt? Succeed despite sabotage? Impossible, they shouted when I emerged from the gravity well simulation, singed but standing. No organic being could. As the methane storms began, I stripped off the compromised environmental suit entirely. The backup skin suit underneath wasn't as comfortable, but it was harder to sabotage. In the Crystal Deserts phase, I used the terrain itself as shelter, much to Kr'thax's visible frustration. But here's the thing about humans: we don't just adapt to overcome challenges. We get creative. I noticed Kr'thax and several other cadets huddled together, their expressions varying forms of smug. The environmental controls in my suit had probably been tampered with again. Today's simulation: methane storms of Titan, Xylith'vax announced, followed by the Crystal Deserts of Proxima B, and concluding with the gravity wells of Neutron Star Station Alpha. The next morning, Commander Xylith'vax announced a new training scenario: survival exercises in rapidly changing environments. Each cadet would need to complete basic tasks while the chamber cycled through different planetary conditions. Well, I grinned. Let's give them some interesting data. Pip'squeek, who had become my unofficial tech support and friend, shook their head. It's not just Kr'thax anymore. Half the xenobiology students are involved. They're treating you like some sort of experiment. The ceremony concluded with the traditional exchange of environmental suits, a practice that dated back to the Federation's founding. Each graduating cadet received a suit tailored to their species' needs. When they got to me, Pip'squeek bounced forward with a special package. We modified it, they squeaked excitedly. Reinforced structure, enhanced gravity compensation, and a built-in coffee synthesizer. Coffee synthesizer Xylith'vax's mandibles clicked in confusion. Trust me, Commander, I laughed. You don't want to see a human trying to handle a crisis without caffeine. Later at the reception, Kr'thax approached me. Their crystalline form had taken on a subtle iridescent pattern, a sign of emotional depth I wouldn't have noticed 3 cycles ago. I was wrong about you, Rodriguez, they said, their harmonic voice resonating with sincerity. We all were. You're not just a primitive Deathworlder. Thanks, Kr'thax. Coming from you, that means you're an absolutely insane primitive Deathworlder, and I look forward to hearing about whatever impossible situations you survive next. I raised my synthesized coffee in a toast to breaking expectations in physics, preferably not in that order. As the celebration continued around us, I caught Commander Xylith'vax watching the proceedings with what might have been satisfaction. His next batch of cadets would include 3 more humans, 2 Martians, and a colonist from Titan. The galaxy was about to get a lot more interesting. You know, Pip'squeek mused, perched on my shoulder, they say humans have a saying, the sky's the limit. I watched the diverse crowd of aliens, former skeptics turned colleagues, rivals turned friends, all united in their recognition that the galaxy still had much to teach us. Actually, I corrected, gesturing to the star-filled viewport beyond the station. We prefer to think of the sky as just the beginning. After all, if there's one thing humans do better than surviving impossible odds, it's finding new impossible odds to survive. And now, with the whole galaxy opening up to us, the possibilities were truly infinite. Commander Xylith'vax would probably call that typically human optimism. I called it Tuesday,